The thing about working in cybersecurity for the federal government is that nobody in my family actually understands what I do. They never have. To them, I'm just Marcus, the quiet 29-year-old who works with computers and still lives alone in a modest apartment instead of buying a house like my older brother Derek. Derek the golden child. Derek who manages a car dealership and never lets anyone forget it. Derek who bought a 4-bedroom house at 26 and married his high school sweetheart. Derek who mom introduces as my successful son, while I get Marcus works with computers or something. I stopped trying to explain my actual job years ago. When I first got the position with the Department of Defense's Cyber Command Division, I tried to tell them it was important work. Dad had laughed. So you're like IT support for the government? That's nice, son. Maybe someday you'll get a real career like your brother. They didn't understand security clearances. They didn't understand compartmentalized information. They definitely didn't understand that my worthless laptop contained encrypted access protocols to systems that monitor threats to national infrastructure. But I couldn't tell them any of that. My entire job existed behind walls of non-disclosure agreements and security protocols. So to my family, I was just Marcus who worked with computers and made decent money doing something boring and technical that nobody wanted to hear about. The family dynamics had been this way for as long as I could remember. Sunday dinners at mom and dad's house were a weekly reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Derek would arrive in his new truck, talking about sales numbers and commissions. His wife Rachel would show off new jewelry. Their kids would run around being adorable. And I would show up alone, drive a 7-year-old sedan, and endure the subtle and not-so-subtle comparisons. Marcus, still renting that apartment? Uncle Tom would ask as if he didn't ask the same question every month. Still single? Aunt Marie would add with fake sympathy. You know, Rachel has a friend. I'm fine, I would say quietly, the same response I'd given for years. The truth was, I made $140,000 a year with full federal benefits and a pension that would make most people weep with envy. I had security clearance that took 18 months of background checks to obtain. I worked on projects that would never make the news specifically because we successfully prevented the disasters. But I couldn't tell them any of that. So I let them think I was the family underachiever. 3 weeks ago things had escalated. Derek had started a new business venture. Some kind of online retail operation he was convinced would make him rich. He'd been asking me for tech advice constantly, which really meant he wanted me to build his entire e-commerce infrastructure for free. Come on, Marcus, he'd said over Sunday dinner. You work with computers all day. This would take you like an hour. Family helps family, right? I don't really do that kind of web development, I'd explained carefully. My work is more specialized. Specialized? Derek had interrupted with a laugh. Dude, you're IT support. Don't make it sound fancy. Can you help me or not? I really don't have time right now. Work has been intense. Mom had frowned at me. Marcus, your brother is asking for help. Surely you can spare a few hours for family? I tried to explain that my current project had me working 12-hour days, that I was literally sleeping 4 hours a night trying to patch a vulnerability in a critical system, that I was under deadlines that had national security implications, but I couldn't say any of that. So it just sounded like excuses. Forget it, Derek had said, waving dismissively. I'll hire a real professional. Someone who actually knows what they're doing. That had stung, but I'd swallowed it like I swallowed everything else. I'd learned a long time ago that defending myself just made things worse. The family had decided who I was and nothing I said would change that narrative. Then last Tuesday I'd made a mistake. I'd been working from home, deeply focused on a security audit that required access to classified systems. My secure government laptop was on my dining room table, connected through multiple layers of encryption and VPN protocols to servers at Fort Meade. I'd taken a break to grab coffee from the kitchen. I was gone maybe 3 minutes. When I came back, Derek was standing in my living room. Jesus, you scared me, I'd said, heart hammering. How did you get in? Used the spare key you gave me last year, he'd said casually, looking around my apartment with barely concealed judgment. Place is kind of depressing, man. You ever think about decorating? I'd quickly closed my laptop, mind racing. What are you doing here? How did you know I was home? Drove by, saw your car. Thought I'd stop in, see if you wanted to grab lunch. He gestured at my closed laptop. Working from home today? Must be nice to have that kind of flexibility. Yeah, I'd said carefully, not mentioning that I'd been up since 4 a.m. dealing with a potential breach attempt. Listen, I'm actually in the middle of something pretty urgent. Always working, Derek had said with an eye roll. When's the last time you just relaxed, man? Maybe that's why you're still single. Girls don't want a guy who's always stressed about his little computer problems. I'd wanted to tell him that my little computer problems this morning involved coordinating with the NSA to track a state-sponsored hacking group trying to infiltrate power grid systems in the Northeast. Instead, I just said, maybe you're right. He'd stayed for 20 minutes talking about his business and how well it was going. It wasn't. I could tell from the stress around his eyes. Before finally leaving, I'd made a mental note to get my spare key back. That had been Tuesday. Sunday dinner tonight had started normally enough. Derek had arrived late, in a worse mood than usual. I'd heard him arguing with Rachel in the driveway before they came in. Money problems from the sound of it. Dinner was pot roast. Mom's specialty. We'd all gathered around the table. Mom and Dad, Derek and Rachel, their kids, Uncle Tom and Aunt Marie, my cousins Jake and Sophie. Standard Sunday crowd. I'd been quiet as usual, letting Derek dominate the conversation with stories about difficult customers and supplier issues. He'd seemed agitated, distracted. Rachel looked tense. Then midway through the meal, Derek had suddenly grinned. Hey, so I need to tell you guys something, he'd announced. I solved my cash flow problem. Everyone had looked interested. Derek's business struggles weren't exactly a secret, despite his efforts to pretend everything was fine. Yeah, Dad had said. How's that? Derek had looked directly at me and something cold had settled in my stomach. So Marcus here had this old laptop sitting in his apartment, Derek had said casually. Just collecting dust on his table. I figured he wasn't using it, right? I mean, who needs 2 laptops? My blood had gone cold. Derek, what did you do? Relax, he'd said with a dismissive wave. You've got your work laptop from your job, right? This other one was just sitting there. So I listed it on Facebook Marketplace yesterday. Sold it this morning for $500. Not bad for an old laptop, right? The table had gone quiet. Everyone was looking between Derek and me. You sold my laptop, I'd said slowly, fighting to keep my voice level. The one from my apartment. Yeah, the old one on your dining table. Come on, don't be weird about this. I needed the cash and you clearly weren't using it. Besides, it's just a laptop. You can buy another one with your fancy government salary. He'd actually laughed. Family helps family, remember? My mind had been racing through the implications. That laptop contained encrypted access to classified systems. It had biometric security, remote tracking, and enough security protocols that unauthorized access would trigger immediate alerts. But if someone tried to crack it, if they managed to access even basic systems. Derek, I'd said carefully. I need that laptop back. Right now. Too late, he'd said with a shrug. Already gave it to the buyer this afternoon. Guy came and picked it up. Cash deal. Jake had snorted. Dude, Marcus, it's just a laptop. Why are you being so uptight? Yeah, Marcus, Aunt Marie had added. Your brother needed the money. Surely you can understand that. Rachel had looked uncomfortable, but she'd said nothing. The kids were focused on their food. Mom had frowned at me. Marcus, you're making a scene. Derek made a mistake, but it's just a computer. Can't you just let it go? Sold your worthless laptop for $500. Derek had laughed, confidence growing as the family sided with him. Finally got rid of your junk. Jake and Sophie had actually high-fived him across the table. Already gave it to the buyer, Derek had continued. What are you gonna do about it, call the police? He'd looked around the table for validation. My brother, everyone. Can't even handle family borrowing his old junk without making it a federal case. The irony of that phrase would hit him soon enough. I'd stood up calmly, folding my napkin beside my plate. I need to make a phone call. Excuse me. Oh, come on, Derek had called after me. Don't be dramatic. It's just a stupid laptop. I'd walked outside to my car, pulled out my personal phone. Never use a personal device for classified communication, but I had a protocol for emergencies, and dialed my supervisor's direct line. Thompson, she'd answered immediately. It's Marcus Chin. Code Black. My secondary secure device has been compromised. There was a pause. Explain. I'd given her the brief version. Family member took device from my residence without authorization. Sold to unknown buyer. Device is currently unaccounted for. When? She'd asked, voice sharp. Transaction completed approximately 4 hours ago. Another pause. Stay where you are. Do not discuss this with anyone. How soon can you get to your brother and get buyer information? I'm at a family dinner with him now. Good. Keep him there. Act normal. I'm escalating this to cybercrimes and activating the device tracker. We'll have a team to your location within 30 minutes. Understood. Marcus, she'd said, voice softer. This isn't your fault. You followed protocol, keeping it in your residence. He committed a federal crime. Do you understand that? Yes, ma'am. This is going to be hard on your family. Are you prepared for that? I'd thought about every dismissive comment, every comparison to Derek, every time they'd made me feel small for doing work I couldn't explain. Yes, ma'am. I'd hung up and stood in the driveway for a moment, composing myself. The device had multiple security layers. Remote tracking was standard. The moment someone tried to power it on without my biometric authentication, it would trigger alerts. If they tried to bypass security, it would brick itself and transmit its location. The FBI Cybercrimes Unit was already tracking the device. They'd been notified the second the security protocols were breached. Derek had just sold classified government property to an unknown buyer. That was theft of federal property, unauthorized disclosure of classified materials, and about 6 other felonies I could think of off the top of my head. And he'd done it for $500. I'd walked back inside. The family was still eating, conversation having moved on. Derek was talking about his business plans, seeming to have already forgotten about the laptop. Everything okay? Mom had asked as I sat back down. Fine, I'd said quietly. Just had to check on something for work. On a Sunday? Dad had shaken his head. They work you too hard at that place. I'd picked up my fork and resumed eating, waiting. My phone had buzzed 20 minutes later. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Team is in position. Maintain normal behavior. Suspect should not leave. I'd glanced at Derek, who was showing Uncle Tom something on his phone. Probably his business website. Completely oblivious. 5 minutes later, there had been a knock at the front door. Dad had frowned, getting up. Who could that be? He'd opened the door to find 6 FBI agents in tactical gear and windbreakers with FBI Cybercrimes in yellow letters across the back. The lead agent had held up credentials. FBI. We're looking for Derek Chin. The entire dining room had frozen. Derek's face had gone white. What is this? Dad had stammered. Sir, please step aside. Derek Chin, you're under investigation for theft of federal property and unauthorized access to classified government systems. We need you to come with us. Derek had stood up so fast his chair fell backward. What? This is insane. I didn't. You sold a laptop this afternoon, the agent had said. It wasn't a question. That laptop is classified government property containing encrypted access to Department of Defense systems. You stole it from a federal employee and sold it to an unauthorized party. That's a minimum of 3 felonies. I didn't know. Derek had shouted. It was just sitting there. Marcus, tell them. Everyone had turned to look at me. Marcus works with computers, Mom had said weakly. There must be some mistake. The agent had looked at me. Mr. Chin, are you Marcus Chin, Senior Cybersecurity Analyst for DoD Cyber Command, Security Clearance Level TS/SCI? Yes, I'd said quietly. The room had erupted. Senior Analyst? Dad had repeated. What does that mean? It means, the agent had said, that your son has top secret/sensitive compartmented information clearance. The laptop his brother stole contains access protocols to classified national security systems. The device is valued at $85,000 and contains classified materials that cannot be quantified in monetary terms. $85,000? Aunt Marie had gasped. The hardware alone, another agent had said. The data is classified. Mr. Derek Chin, we're going to need information about the buyer immediately. Where is the laptop now? Derek had been shaking. I sold it to some guy on Facebook Marketplace. He paid cash. I don't know his name. He used a fake profile probably. You sold classified government property to an unknown buyer, the agent had said flatly. Do you understand the severity of this? I didn't know. Derek had looked at me desperately. Marcus, you never told me. You said you worked with computers. How was I supposed to know? The device, I'd said quietly, has my name and DoD property tags on it. It requires biometric authentication to access. There are 3 different warning labels about unauthorized use. I didn't look. Derek had shouted. I just saw an old laptop. You entered my apartment without permission, I'd continued calmly. Took federal property and sold it to an unknown party. You never asked if you could take it. I used to borrow your stuff all the time. When we were kids, Derek. We're not kids anymore. Rachel had started crying. The children were confused and scared. Mom was sitting down heavily, hand over her mouth. Dad looked like he was in shock. We've already located the device, another agent said, checking a tablet. Tracking activated when the buyer attempted to power it on. Local law enforcement is moving to that location now. Mr. Derek Chin, you're going to need to come with us for questioning. Am I under arrest? Derek's voice cracked. Not at this time. But you're facing serious federal charges. We strongly advise you to cooperate fully and obtain legal representation immediately. Jake had found his voice. This is crazy. Marcus, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them Derek didn't mean anything. I'd looked at my cousin. He stole classified government property and sold it to an unknown buyer. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. He's your brother. Sophie had shouted. How can you just sit there? He committed a federal crime, I'd said simply. I don't have a choice. Neither does he. Uncle Tom had stood up. Now wait just a minute. This family doesn't turn on each other. Marcus, you need to tell these people this was all a misunderstanding. Sir, the lead agent had interjected. This isn't Mr. Marcus Chen's decision. Federal law is very clear about theft and unauthorized handling of classified materials. Your nephew committed these crimes. The evidence is documented. This isn't a family matter. It's a national security issue. Derek had been put in flex cuffs, for transport purposes, they'd said, and led out to an unmarked SUV. Rachel had followed, crying, trying to understand what was happening. The kids had been confused, scared. The agents had spent the next hour documenting everything. Getting statements, taking photos of Derek's phone and transaction records, explaining the process. Mom had finally looked at me, tears streaming down her face. You let them take your brother. He took classified government property, I'd said quietly. The moment he did that, the outcome was determined. I didn't make this happen. He did. You never told us. Dad had exploded. You let us think you were just some low-level computer guy. You never said you worked on important stuff. I couldn't, I'd said. My work is classified. I'm not allowed to discuss it. That's what security clearance means. So this whole time, Aunt Marie had said slowly, while we've been feeling sorry for you, you've been what? Some kind of spy. I'm a cybersecurity analyst. I protect critical infrastructure systems from hostile attacks. I've never been a spy, and I've never asked anyone to feel sorry for me. The lead agent had finished his documentation and approached me. Mr. Chin, you'll need to come to our office tomorrow for a full debrief. Your supervisor has been notified. You'll likely be placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. Investigation of me? Standard protocol when a secure device is compromised. It's not punitive. You followed proper security procedures. But we need to document everything and ensure no additional breaches occurred. I'd nodded. I understand. For what it's worth, the agent had said quietly so only I could hear, you did everything right. Your brother made his own choices. After they'd left, the family had sat in stunned silence. $85,000, Uncle Tom had finally said. For a laptop. The hardware is specialized, I'd explained. Custom encryption, biometric security, remote tracking and data destruction capabilities. Plus access to systems that monitor power grids, water treatment facilities, transportation networks. Basically the infrastructure that keeps the country running. Jesus Christ, Dad had breathed. You protect all that? I'm part of a team, yes. We monitor for threats, patch vulnerabilities, coordinate responses to attacks. Most of our work prevents things that never make the news because we stop them. Why didn't you ever tell us? Mom had asked, voice breaking. Because I couldn't. And because you never seemed interested. Every time I tried to explain my work, someone would change the subject or make a joke about IT support. Eventually, I stopped trying. Sophie had looked at her phone. Oh my God. Marcus, you're on LinkedIn. Your actual title is Senior Threat Intelligence Analyst, DoD Cyber Command. Why would you let us think you were just nobody? I never said I was nobody. You all decided that. The silence that followed was heavy. Derek is going to prison, Rachel had said, who'd come back inside after seeing her husband driven away. Isn't he? For years. I'd looked at the FBI agent's card he'd given me. Theft of government property, unauthorized disclosure of classified information, potential espionage charges depending on the buyer's intentions. Yes. Probably. Can you stop it? She'd begged. Can you tell them it was a mistake? It wasn't a mistake, Rachel. It was theft. And even if I wanted to, I couldn't. This is federal law. The charges are mandatory once the crime is committed. He's your brother, she'd whispered. He treated me like garbage for years, I'd said quietly. Made me feel worthless. Mocked my job. Stole from me. Sold classified property to an unknown buyer. Which, by the way, could have gotten people killed if that information reached the wrong hands. He didn't care about any of that. He just saw an opportunity to make $500. Mom had been crying. Dad had his head in his hands. The family that had gathered for Sunday dinner was destroyed, scattered. My phone had buzzed. Another text, buyer in custody. Chinese national with suspected intelligence ties. Device recovered intact. Full investigation proceeding. Report 0800 tomorrow. I'd stood up, suddenly exhausted. I need to go. I have to report to Fort Meade in the morning. Marcus, Dad had called as I reached the door. I'm sorry. For all the years we didn't listen. Didn't take you seriously. I'd paused. I appreciate that, Dad. But right now, I need to deal with the security breach in the investigation. We can talk later. I'd driven home in silence, mind processing everything. Tomorrow would be a full security review. Every system I'd accessed, every protocol, every potential vulnerability Derek's theft might have created. My clearance would be examined. My judgment questioned. All because my brother thought he could make quick cash. The hardest part was that I'd seen it coming. I'd known Derek was struggling financially. I'd known he was desperate. And I'd still trusted him with a key to my apartment, still let him into my space where classified materials existed. That had been my only mistake. 3 days later, I sat in a conference room at Fort Meade with my supervisor, 2 FBI agents, and a representative from the Office of Personnel Security. The buyer was a Chinese intelligence officer operating under corporate cover, the FBI agent explained. He'd been targeting government employees, looking for opportunities to acquire access to classified systems. Your brother's Facebook listing triggered surveillance algorithms. We had the buyer under watch when he purchased the device. So it was a setup? I'd asked. Not for your brother specifically. But yes, we were monitoring the buyer. When he purchased a laptop matching the description of secure government hardware, we moved immediately. Your brother committed the crime, but we were watching the buyer commit espionage. What happens to Derek? He's being charged with theft of government property and unauthorized possession of classified materials. The espionage charges will likely be dropped since he clearly had no idea what he was selling. But the theft charges stand. He's looking at minimum 5 years federal prison, possibly more. And my clearance? My supervisor had smiled slightly. Intact. You followed every protocol. The device was properly stored in a secured residence. You reported the theft immediately. You cooperated fully with the investigation. If anything, this case demonstrates why our security protocols work. The rest of my family doesn't see it that way. Families rarely do, the OPS representative had said. For what it's worth, Mr. Chin, you handled an impossible situation correctly. Your brother put national security at risk for $500. That's not your fault. I'd nodded, but it didn't make it easier. The following Sunday, I didn't go to family dinner. Neither did Derek. He was in federal custody awaiting trial. Rachel had filed for divorce. The kids were staying with her parents. Mom had called 6 times. I'd let it go to voicemail. Dad had texted, "We need to talk about this as a family." I'd replied, "There's nothing to talk about. Derek committed a federal crime. I did my job. That's all there is to it." Uncle Tom had sent a long message about family loyalty, about how I should have warned Derek, about how I was tearing the family apart. I'd blocked his number. The truth was, I'd spent years being made to feel small by people who didn't understand or appreciate what I did. I'd endured countless comments about my career, my lifestyle, my worth. I'd stayed quiet because my work was classified and because defending myself only made things worse. Derek's theft hadn't just been about a laptop. It had been about seeing something of mine and deciding he had more right to it than I did. It had been about years of being dismissed and disrespected, culminating in one final assumption that my things didn't matter, that I didn't matter. But my things did matter. My work mattered. And the laptop he'd sold for beer money contained access to systems that protected millions of people. 3 weeks after Derek's arrest, I sat in court for his initial hearing. Rachel was there with a lawyer. Mom and Dad sat in the back looking older than I'd ever seen them. The prosecutor laid out the charges. The evidence was overwhelming. Derek's own Facebook messages, the transaction records, the photos he'd taken of the laptop to post online, showing clear DoD property markings. "How do you plead?" the judge asked. "Guilty, Your Honor," Derek's lawyer said. "My client wishes to cooperate fully and accept responsibility for his actions." The judge looked at the case file. "Mr. Chin, you stole and sold classified government property to a foreign intelligence officer. Do you understand how serious this is?" "Yes, Your Honor," Derek said, voice barely audible. "I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was my brother's old laptop. But that doesn't excuse what I did. I took something that wasn't mine. I'm sorry." The judge looked at me. "Mr. Marcus Chin, you're the victim in this case. Do you wish to make a statement?" I'd prepared for this. I stood up. "Your Honor, my brother made a choice to take something that didn't belong to him without asking permission. Whether he understood what it was or not, that choice had consequences. I don't believe he intended to harm national security. But I also believe he needs to be held accountable for his actions. I'll abide by whatever sentence the court determines is appropriate." The judge had nodded. "Sentencing will be scheduled for 6 weeks from now. Mr. Derek Chin, you'll remain in custody until that time. This court is adjourned." As they'd led Derek away, he'd looked at me one last time. Not angry. Not pleading. Just defeated. Outside the courthouse, Dad had caught up with me. "Marcus, wait." I'd stopped, turned. "Your mother and I, we've been talking. We never understood what you do. We never took it seriously. And we're sorry for that." "Okay," I'd said carefully. "But Derek is your brother. 5 years in federal prison. That's going to destroy his life. His kids will grow up without a father. Rachel is already filing for divorce. Everything is falling apart." "I know. Can't you do something? Talk to someone? Get the charges reduced?" I'd looked at my father, really looked at him. Saw the desperation, the pain, the hope that somehow I could fix this. "No," I'd said quietly. "I can't. And even if I could, I wouldn't." Derek made his choice. He stole classified government property and sold it to someone who turned out to be a foreign intelligence officer. People could have died if that information had been compromised. That's not something I can just ask people to overlook because he's my brother. "So you're choosing your job over your family?" "I'm choosing national security over protecting someone who committed a serious crime. That's not about my job or my family. That's about doing what's right." Dad had looked at me like he didn't know me. Maybe he never had. "I don't know if I can forgive you for this," he'd said. "I'm not asking you to," I'd replied. "But understand something, Dad. For years, you and everyone else in this family made me feel like what I do doesn't matter. Like I'm somehow less than Derek because I don't drive a new truck or own a house. But what I do matters. Matters a lot. And the laptop Derek sold for $500 represented access to systems that keep people alive. I'm not apologizing for protecting those systems or for holding him accountable when he put them at risk." I'd walked away then, back to my car, back to my quiet apartment, back to my classified work that my family would never understand. Derek was sentenced 8 weeks later. 4 years in federal prison followed by 3 years of supervised release. He'd serve his time at a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania. Rachel divorced him 2 months after that. The kids would visit him once a month. His dealership job was obviously gone. When he got out, he'd be a convicted felon with a destroyed career and a shattered family. And every bit of it had been his choice. As for me, I received a commendation for my handling of the security breach. My clearance was upgraded. I was offered a promotion to lead analyst with a significant pay increase. I took it. The family stopped inviting me to Sunday dinners. I didn't fight it. Some relationships can't survive the truth. And the truth was that I'd spent years being someone small in their eyes because I couldn't explain who I really was. Derek had stolen from me thinking I was weak, thinking I wouldn't fight back, thinking my things didn't matter. He'd been wrong on all counts. The last communication I had with him was a letter he sent from prison 3 months into his sentence. Marcus, I know you won't forgive me. I don't expect you to. I just want you to know that I finally understand. You weren't just some computer guy. You were protecting important things. And I treated you like garbage for years because I didn't understand. I'm sorry. I know it's too late. But I'm sorry. Derek. I'd read it once, then filed it away. He was right. It was too late. But maybe it had always been too late. Maybe the damage had been done years ago with every dismissive comment and every assumption that I was less than him. The laptop had just been the final proof of what he'd always believed. That my things were worthless, that I was worthless, that taking from me didn't matter because I didn't matter. He'd learned differently. They all had. And now I could finally go back to my work. Important, classified, world-protecting work, without the weight of their judgment. Without the pretense that I was anything other than what I'd always been. A senior cybersecurity analyst who'd stopped an espionage attempt before it could harm anyone. That was enough. It would always be enough.